Hello again, it's your internet dad, sharing life lessons I offered my own sons in the hope that they'll be useful to you or your friends. If you like this series, become a subscriber, but certainly share a link with a friend of any subject that you find useful. They come out twice a week. Today's title is Dress for Success, Shoes. And I hope you've checked my other videos on dress for success, getting down to business, correct accessories, dress shirt, etc. This is on shoes. And it's a basic guide to what you need when you go out in the world, finding work, being interviewed, etc. It's just the basics. You can have a much more extravagant collection of shoes that I'm recommending, but you won't go far wrong if you follow my advice. Now, many years ago, when I was around 8 years old, I'd noticed that my mother was wearing bally shoes. That's B-A-L-L-Y. And I subsequently learned that they were made in Switzerland. Now, when I asked her about them, she said, "You've got to remember that when your father and I were first married, we didn't have a lot of money, and so I couldn't afford cheap shoes." Just think of that. I couldn't afford cheap shoes. Now, when you're 8 years old and an adult says that to you, you can't admit ignorance. You nod authoritatively and wonder what on earth that meant. Well, it took me a number of years to work out what she was saying was, you buy good shoes that'll last many years. Many of my shoes are 20 and 30 years old. So much better than buying cheap shoes that will wear out in a year, 18 months, or 2 years. So that's the advice. You can't afford cheap shoes. What do I mean by that? Well, shoes are mostly two different types of construction. By far the most common is shoes that are glued together. This is particularly true of lighter shoes. Heavier lace-ups, however, should be made of sterner stuff. And I heartily recommend what's called the Goodyear welt. That's W-E-L-T. And this is a type of shoe construction that was invented in the United States 100 years ago. The easy way to remember it is Goodyear tires. And Goodyear tires was named after Charles Goodyear, who invented vulcanization and made tires possible for automobiles. Well, his son took a different path, and he went into shoe manufacturing, and he designed the Goodyear welt, which is essentially just a stronger way of constructing a shoe, but importantly, it permits you to re-sole them a number of times so that they'll last a long time. And one caveat on that is shoe repairs are almost a dying breed in many parts of the country. This is really sad, but it's part of our throwaway society. But if you can find a real shoe repair, treasure him because they're very useful. The basic shoe choices that I recommend for you going into business or whatever is to start with a so-called Oxford shoe, which is a plain lace-up with no design on it. It's called Oxford because it first became popular in Oxford University. The second shoe that you should buy is a brogue. That's B-R-O-G-U-E. These are perforated designs, and they're known as wingtips in the United States because the toe looks a bit like the wingtips of aircraft in the 1930s. Of course, they started out very, very rustic shoes. Believe it or not, the holes were real. Let the water drain out when you stomped across a Scottish or an Irish moor. But now, of course, those have been so much more refined and they look quite elegant. So those are the two basic shoes you should look at, Oxford and brogue or wingtip. That certainly works very well in winter when you've got heavy rains and the like and you need a sturdy shoe. In the summer, I tend to wear what's called slip-ons. And for the obvious reason, they slip on, slip off. And they can be worn with a formal suit without any difficulty. So you've got those three choices. Now I'm going to move on to an absolute essential, which is on the informal side of your shoe needs. And that is the Gucci type casual slip-on. Now the original was made by Gucci of Italy, but there are many similar shoes today. This one is actually by Cole Haan. And this will work with khakis, jeans, casual trousers, and will actually, under many circumstances, work with a suit as well. Now, where can you get all these shoes? Well, you can buy Gucci and Bally, certainly here in the United States, and there are some really good American manufacturers. You'll be familiar with Johnson & Murphy, Florsheim, Allen Edmonds, and the Cole Haan that I mentioned. But you shouldn't restrict yourself just to the US. I've already mentioned Bally of Switzerland and Gucci of Italy, but a very strong part of the market comes from the United Kingdom. And in many people's opinion, these are the most durable shoes that are available in the world, and they can be very good value. They all come from Northampton, which is in the English Midlands, and they frequently private label stores here in America, but the most common one that you would remember would be Churches, which are made in Northampton. All of these specialize in the Goodyear welt, so look for that. Other names are Loke, John Lobb, and other names that you may be less familiar with, like Trickers. The important one is, while they all have websites, there's an easier way of doing it, and that is, I recommend the Charles Tyrwhitt, that's Tyrwhitt website. They also sell shoes in addition to their fame as shirt sellers, and you'll find some very good values on English made shoes which are private labeled by them. Now, on the question of fashion, traditionally it was always the case that a black or dark blue suit needed black shoes. But with a dark grey suit, you would have the option of black or preferably dark brown shoes. That has changed recently, and you'll see a lot of people wearing brown shoes with navy blue suits. And that's fine, it's their choice. One thing I would point out, though, is that whenever you bring somebody's eyes down to your ankles in looking at the brown shoes, certainly it may make you look shorter than you are, because it will spoil the vertical line of your suit. But it's your choice. An important accessory which I always would suggest you follow is not made of leather, but it's almost as important as your shoes, and that is your socks. I strongly advocate what is called mid-calf socks. Now, one of the more disturbing and distracting thing is to see a hairy ankle between the bottom of the pant leg and the shoe. It looks scruffy, and it spoils the vertical line of your suit. So while most socks are worn just above the ankle length, do look for the mid-calf. It's a much better look for you. The other accessory that I recommend is the wooden shoe tree. And these are available on the internet. If you spend money on shoes, you should have a pair of these for every pair of shoes you own. And as soon as you finish wearing them, put the shoe trees in. They're made of cedar, which absorbs human sweat, which will rot the stitching in your shoes. Now, this is going to be a subject of another video on how to look after your shoes, but that should be it. One thought I want to leave you with is you may think that when women check you out, that they'll look at the cut of your suit or your tie or certainly your watch to get an idea of who or what you are. But the surprise seems to be that they actually look at your shoes. Now, for women, shoes are a very important part of their wardrobe, and maybe that's why they do it. But the important thing is they will look at your shoes. So don't wear scruffy shoes, don't wear ill-fitting shoes, and perhaps don't wear cheap ones. So if you follow my advice, you'll remember what my mother said. None of us can afford cheap shoes, so get good ones and look after them. Till next time.